New information about the mass shooting at the VTA rail yard in San Jose, what the sheriff revealed about the man who opened fire and how he targeted some of his victims. Plus,
Alex was really fighting hard. He didn't want to go anywhere, and I didn't want him to go.
Heartbreak from a wife holding on to her husband in his final moments, how the community as a whole is coming together to help the families of the 9 people who lost their lives. The News at Noon starts now.
This is KTVU Fox 2 News at Noon.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Mibach.
And I'm Claudine Wong, in for Garcia Michaelian. The gravity of the loss of life becoming even more profound as every hour passes. This as more families come forward with stories of lost loved ones. Meanwhile, the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office continues its investigation into the most deadly mass shooting in Bay Area history. KTVU South Bay reporter Jesse Gary begins our coverage this noontime. He is live in San Jose outside of the shooting scene. Jesse?
And Claudine, good afternoon. It's a very active shooting scene. As you see, a vehicle is moving out past the shooting scene. So we'll just slide out of the way just to let this vehicle get out. Those were investigators who are doing their work here at the VTA yard. Sheriff Lori Smith has been also on site most of the morning, personally overseeing the search for answers. We'll talk more about the investigation in just a little bit, but first let's go to our videotape. This was just a little bit while ago in North San Jose. VTA officials gathered for a press conference honoring the 9 fellow employees who were killed Monday morning. The name of each person was read, and some managers gave testimony to the character and dedication each person showed as an employee.
Sometimes my demands could be unreasonable, but Paul always accepted it with a smile. He was willing to help his employees.
I saw the immense pain in the faces of the families, and I heard their cries when they got the news, and it was utterly heart-wrenching, and I felt immensely helpless.
And that was VTA Acting General Manager Evelyn Tran. Now, the sheriff tells us the weapons used yesterday by alleged shooter Sam Cassidy were 2 semi-automatic handguns. Around 6:30 Monday morning, the 57-year-old Cassidy, a VTA employee, came to the authorities' light rail yard near North First and San Pedro and opened fire. He fired 39 rounds and also carried 11 gun magazines that were loaded with bullets. He apparently targeted his victims, not shooting one person but killing others. Sheriff's deputies and San Jose police officers responded quickly, and Cassidy took his own life as lawmen and women moved in.
I know that our deputies and the officers that responded while the shooting was still happening are heroes. They went in, they confronted the suspect.
The sheriff says it could take weeks to uncover the motive behind the mass murders, if ever. VTA officials say light rail service suspended indefinitely. The authority has grief counselors at all of its divisions. There's going to be a public memorial tonight at 6 p.m. at San Jose City Hall. The mayor says it's an opportunity for the community to come out and grieve together. And we're live outside the VTA light rail yard here in San Jose. Jesse Gary, KTVU, Fox 2 News. We'll head back to you.
Okay. Thanks so much for that report, Jesse.
One victim, Alex Fritsch, was transported to a hospital. But late last night, he died from his injuries, and right there by his side, holding his hand, was his wife. KTVU's Frank Mallicoat joins us live. And Frank, I know you shared part of this story earlier today. What an emotional, what a powerful story.
Yeah, and what a strong woman, Mike, to open her doors less than 24 hours after losing her husband. She is remarkable. But as you mentioned, her husband was the 9th victim. He died shortly after 9 o'clock at Valley Medical Center here in San Jose in front of family. His name was Alex Fritsch. His wife, Tara, and Alex were soulmates. And she still can't believe he's gone.
He literally was my best friend. If you didn't see us together, people would be like, wait, where's the other one?
Tara Fritsch is still in disbelief. Her husband, Alex, her partner for 20 years, was killed in yesterday's mass killing at the San Jose VTA.
Alex was everything to this family. He was our sole financial provider. He was our rock, my safe place to fall. He was the love of my life.
Alex Fritch was 49, raised in Ben Lomond, and lived in San Jose. He was the father of 3. Tara describes him as a dreamer, always looking for fun, be it on their dirt bikes or pouring a custom cocktail. He did everything with gusto.
Alex was a super optimistic person, which was perfect because I can be very pessimistic, so he balanced me. He always tried to look on the bright side of everything. He loved Mr. Rogers. He watched him all the time. He loved the documentaries. He loved movies. We had matching Star Wars tattoos that we had gotten for our 15th anniversary.
Tara got word of the shooting shortly after 7 a.m. on Wednesday when a friend called and asked if Alex was safe. She went into panic mode and started making phone calls.
I called the coroner's office, and he wasn't there. And I called Valley Med, and he was there. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in flip-flops before in my life, but I was running, and they brought me, everybody was waiting for me, and they brought me to that little room we all see on TV. We all know what that little room means.
Tara knew her husband had little time, but she is grateful she was given that extra time to prepare and, more importantly, say goodbye to the love of her life.
Alex was really fighting hard. He didn't want to go anywhere, and I didn't want him to go. And the nurse was so sweet and wonderful. They moved him over in his bed so I could lay down next to him and be with him. And he just somehow knew I was there because his hand, it had been twitchy, but it grabbed my hand. And the nurse came in because he was deteriorating. And she said, he knows you're here. He's crying. And he took his last breath and his heart stopped.
Well, it is heartbreaking, obviously, and it bears repeating. Tara was just so kind and so welcoming to my photographer, Ben, and myself going in, as I mentioned, less than 24 hours after losing her husband. We spoke to her this morning. At that time, she had not heard from the VTA, but the VTA has since reached out to all the victims' families and are offering comfort and care. That's the latest here in San Jose. I'm Frank Mallicoat, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Sad, tragic, heartbreaking, all of it. All right, Frank, thank you. Governor Newsom quickly traveled to San Jose soon after getting news about the shooting.
When are we going to come to grips with this? When are we going to put down our arms, literally and figuratively, our politics, stale rhetoric, finger pointing, all the hand-wringing consternation that produces nothing except more fury and frustration, more scenes like this repeated over and over and over again.
The governor went on to say that he has vowed not to make this moment meaningless, but to, quote, bring meaning to this tragic moment in our state and nation's history, end quote. South Bay Congressman Ro Khanna echoing the governor's words. He says it's long overdue that something is done to take dangerous, high-powered weapons off the streets.
I've been in Congress for almost 5 years, and in my time there, we haven't passed a single piece of meaningful gun violence legislation.
Following yesterday's shooting, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has announced that the Senate will vote on a bill to strengthen background checks, but did not elaborate on when that would actually happen. In response to the shooting, California Senator Dianne Feinstein says lawmakers must pass more common sense gun laws. In a statement, the senator blames her Republican colleagues, saying, quote, it's largely because congressional Republicans refuse to take reasonable steps to reduce gun violence.
Well, the shooting in San Jose raises the number of mass shootings this year to 232. Some people may be surprised by that number, thinking the number might have decreased when people were spending more time at home during the pandemic. There were 610 shootings last year, a 46% increase from 2019. But experts say the shootings were not happening in public places, so may have gone mostly unnoticed. They say stress over unemployment may have contributed to rising violence. But they say it's hard to know what provokes someone, because many times the shooters also kill themselves.
Some of them are quite suicidal or sort of profoundly antagonistic to the world, and this is going to be the way that they're going to right the wrongs that they perceive that they have suffered.
They say each shooting is different, so it's hard to predict what's going to set someone off. Unfortunately, they also agree that there will most likely be more shootings in the United States. And stay with KTVU and KTVU.com as we continue to follow the very latest on the deadly VTA rail yard shooting. You can also get alerts sent straight to your mobile devices with the KTVU News app.
New at noon, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is in San Francisco, where she is putting more focus on efforts to stop hate crimes against the Asian American community. This morning, Speaker Pelosi met with members of the San Francisco AAPI Council. They discussed the rising threat of anti-Asian discrimination and violence. The speaker also highlighted the enactment of the bipartisan COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which President Biden signed into law last week.
What is important and what we know is we have to keep talking about it so that people know what opportunities are there for them. They know to make a distinction between what someone might just call a casual reference, but if you hear the language, you know it is a hate crime.
The Hate Crimes Act provides guidance for state and local law enforcement agencies to report hate crimes. It also expands public education campaigns and issues guidance to combat discriminatory language when describing the pandemic.
Still to come at noon, the Labor Department has just released its weekly jobs report. We take a look at the decline nationwide and tell you why it's a different story here in California. Plus, we continue to follow the latest developments out of San Jose. More on what we're learning about the gunman in yesterday's VTA rail yard shooting as police continue their investigation.
And a slight cool down today for much of the Bay Area as we give you that live look out at downtown San Francisco. A lot of blue sky out there. We're going to check in with meteorologist Mark Tamao. He's got your forecast that includes a warm up this holiday weekend.